Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone and welcome to Aging Less, the Longevity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Marie Stella, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together.
Hi everyone and welcome back to Aging Less. And on this episode, we are talking about kidney health for a longer life, what you need to know. And joining us in our Melbourne studio today is Karen Dwyer, and we're very excited to talk to her about this topic because Karen is a kidney specialist with over 20 years of clinical experience. And she was also the lead physician in Australia's first and only hand transplant procedure in 2011. She is also a professor of nephrology at the University of Melbourne and at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. In case you're wondering, or were wondering just like me, nephrology means kidney, apparently. Anything to do with kidney, I think. So thank you so much for joining us, Karen.
Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, so this is, as I mentioned to you, a topic that I never thought I would talk about on any podcast, or actually in life in general. In my daily life, I don't think anyone ever mentioned, hey, let's have a chat about kidney. But we know that kidney, as any other organ, is crucial to our longevity, to our well-being, and it's important for us to understand it. That's why we're here with you today. And I'm curious, I would love to know why you chose to do this, for a professional career, to specialize in kidney.
Yeah, so the pathway to in medicine is fairly convoluted, and as a junior doctor, I decided that I wanted to be in medicine as opposed to surgery. And then amongst the medical specialties, I almost fell into nephrology, which is the study of kidneys, neph being kidney, and it's actually a really fulfilling specialty because it encompasses care for people across the journey. So kidney health is what we want to achieve, but kidney disease occurs very commonly. There's over more than 2 million Australians that have chronic kidney disease. And for many people, they're actually unaware that they have kidney disease. And then as that progresses, that's when people reach kidney failure and need something like dialysis or transplantation to maintain their life. And there's lots of very interesting conditions that can affect the kidney. So it's a condition that has acute medicine, but also you have that long-term relationship with people living with kidney disease, and that's a really fulfilling part of what I do.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great to hear. I think it's something new for me to learn today, for sure. And so great to be able to invite you to our show because this is a relatively new show and we wanted to really understand the different organs and how to take care of each one, and ensure that, we take care of our health in the right way using science. Now, before we get into the topic, I am very curious about another thing that was on your quote-unquote resume, which is the hand transplantation. I was reading the bio and I was like, I don't know if there's a typo here somewhere because, you specialize in the study of kidney and kidney health, but the other thing that you're very famous for is the hand transplantation. So please let us know a bit more about this. What happened there? Why did it happen? And how were you involved?
So this sounds very much like my mother. She rang me and she said, I thought you did kidneys. What are you doing? So this opportunity came about because there was a person living in Victoria that had lost both their hands due to a very severe illness. And Transplantation, as I'm sure you're aware, there's many organs that can be transplanted. There's kidney, heart, liver, lungs. And whilst there's a lot of nuance to each particular organ, there's a lot of factors that are common across every organ, and in particular, the medications that we use to prevent rejection of the organ. So when there was this potential to be involved in a hand transplant, I was there really to provide input on the medication side of things. We clearly worked with a team of surgeons, of microsurgeons that deal with the very detailed operation of joining together arteries and nerves and blood vessels. So I wasn't directly involved in the surgical part, but I was involved in ensuring that the patient was well enough to undergo this procedure, and then that follow-up to ensure that they didn't reject. And a lot of that, there's a lot of commonality with what we do in kidney transplantation, but of course there is a lot of nuance, and it gave me the opportunity to learn from surgical colleagues, and I learned from a lot of colleagues overseas that have done more hand transplants, and it was an exciting opportunity. And I certainly love being involved in innovation. So it was ideal.
Yeah. And that's over 10 years ago now.
Mm.
It's been a long while. And I'm sure the medical field has seen great changes since then. I guess because it has been such a long time, I wonder what is still with you. Like what still stays with you the most? And you think about it all the time whenever you think about the hand transplantation.
So I still see the hand transplant recipient. I'm still involved in his care, and this is part of the sort of that long-term relationship that you do have with patients. Every year as the date comes around, I certainly remember exactly how that day evolved, because it was such a big occasion, and we'd spent a lot of time preparing for that big occasion. But like with all transplantation, there's always a really exciting and happy story, and that's somebody that receives the transplant. But at the other end of the phone is a really sad story of someone that's lost a loved one, a family member. And I think the thing that really resonates with me in transplantation is the selflessness of people who become organ donors. And that I think is the priceless part of transplantation. It really does give somebody another chance at life, but it is such a selfless and generous act.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could only try to imagine, what the family of the donors would be going through. I think it's definitely something that even if our listeners don't really go through or, they don't know much about, just hearing from your experience would definitely help them to appreciate, the medical field in general, and also, appreciate life so much more. And we have this really big respect for anyone who are organ donors. I think it's not a common thing to see in the everyday life, but then whenever something like this happens, we're like, oh yes, that they're really selfless, and there are people like that to help others continue on, and that's the beauty of life.
Yeah, it's the ultimate gift,
Yeah.
and I've been involved in many, many transplants now, and I'm always really struck by the whole process.
Yeah.
And in kidney transplantation, you can do living donation because we have 2 kidneys and we can donate a kidney. And I love seeing people that come in together with their donor. And other than saying hello to the recipient, I'm always asking the donor, well, how are you? Because really, without you, this wouldn't have happened. And often, like carers and like donors, they often get forgotten because we focus on the person with the illness. But, they are the unsung heroes.
Absolutely. That's so great to hear. And thank you for sharing that little bit of window into your world. I think we are getting to know you a bit better. And we have another section where we want to get to know you even better with some of the things that you love or things that you would like to share with our audience. There will be 5 questions in this part called Have You Met Karen? So we're just going to get to know what you love. The first thing I would love to know is, what's your favorite book?
So my favourite book at the moment is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I'd heard about this book a while ago and not read it. And it was a book that I picked up walking through an airport one day. And I read it and I've reread it. And I use that very often in my day-to-day clinical practice. I use it for my own habit building and trying to break habits. But I think it is such a useful book, and there are some really golden suggestions and ideas for people to embark on that healthier lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that book. And yeah, I've got this stack of favorite books, and it's in that stack. And like I don't reread it the full book, but I do flip through it from time to time because it's such a great reminder. So yeah, thank you for sharing. What about your recent favorite movie?
So recent favourite movies. So I have to say I haven't actually been to the cinema for a long time. So these are movies that have come on to Netflix or TV. And the first movies that pop into mind, there was a movie called Naiad, and it's about Diana Naiad, who was the first woman to swim from Cuba to Florida.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was a really, really great movie. I do really like autobiographies written and in film. There was another book called The Swimmers, which was another movie called The Swimmers, which was about two Syrian refugees who fled Syria and took up swimming and then swam in the refugee team for the Olympics, which was, it was just a wow kind of movie.
Yeah.
And I always think about Ride Like a Girl around this time of year, which is Michelle Payne in the Melbourne Cup. And, I guess with all of them, they're depicting really strong women who have had a lot of determination and reached a goal. And I guess that's something that I aspire to.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I have to say all of those movies are new to me. I initially thought there was a swimming theme, but then the strong women theme makes so much more sense. So thank you for sharing. I'll put them onto my list. And we would also love to know about a favorite podcast if you are a podcast listener.
Yeah, I've become a real podcast listener, and I sort of listen continuously to podcasts. So I have a lot of medical type of podcasts. I like to listen to things like around metabolism. So there's a podcast called Metabolic Classroom, which I really like. Real life medicine, health and weight loss, I think it's called, is a terrific podcast by two local general practitioners. And then I listened to a podcast called Conversations, and that's just a really beautiful podcast interviewing many different Australians and understanding their life story. And some of them have done major things in their life, and some are just ordinary Australians, but they're just wonderful insights into their lives.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. That's a lot of different podcasts as well, not just one. So we have lots of recommendations there. I wonder if you have any role model or one personal role model or perhaps multiple role models.
I find this a tricky question to answer because I think I'm influenced by lots of different people, and I think maybe similar to what movies I liked, they've got a similar theme, and it's people that are authentic, that are passionate and quite determined. And so, I always look back at Julia Gillard as the first female Prime Minister of Australia, and I think she displays many of those qualities. So she definitely is a role model that I have looked up to in the past, and I think it's that authenticity that's really important. There's I think a lot of professional athletes, again, just show that determination and dedication that I really aspire to.
Yeah. Would you like to share some names that you really think about when you think about this question? Some athletes?
Oh, so athletes, someone like Ash Barty, who I think epitomizes grace, determination, talent. Someone like her is amazing. I'm actually not a swimmer, really. I've been more of a runner. So, someone like Kathy Freeman, when she had all that pressure on her at the 2000 Olympics, and her grace and her poise and her determination was incredible. I think in politics, and I'm not really very politically minded, but again, it's strong women that can survive and thrive in that sort of environment, are people that I really look up to.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing. And finally, before we move on to the main part of the podcast, let's get to know a course that has really influenced you.
Yeah. So I think probably in the middle of the pandemic, so in 2020, I was listening to, I guess it's not really a course, but there was a series of podcasts that came out called The Obesity Code. And that was something that really was very pivotal in my clinical practice and how I changed the emphasis of what I did and how I approached and supported people in my clinical practice. So, I'd been toying with that way of clinical practice up until that point. And I think, lockdowns and whatnot, I had a concentrated period where I was listening throughout this series of webinars or lectures, and that was really a changing point for me. And I think that's been then supported through, I've attended since then each year a conference called Low Carb Down Under, and the guests that they have presenting at those conferences have been really pivotal in influencing my own health, but also how I try and support others with their health.
Well, thank you. This is very cool because it's not really a course, but it's something you'll learn from. And I just love that we can learn from anything. And it doesn't have to be a formal course where you have all the tests and exams. It's even better, like your case, when you actually apply it and, you continue on with it. That's really great to know. So now that we've got to know you quite well, let's talk about today's topic and let's dive deeper into kidney health. So this show, as I mentioned earlier, is about longevity. And, we really want to get to know all that there is to know about longevity and human health. So I would love to know from your perspective, being in the medical field, how do you personally view longevity?
So I guess longevity, by its simplest definition, is living a long life. And that for some people is what longevity may mean, and they may be quite comfortable with that. I think for me, it's really trying to differentiate between lifespan versus health span. And we're thinking about quality of life versus quantity of life. Yes. So I like to think of longevity as a health span. Hopefully many long years, but many long years of living a healthy life. And that's more than just the absence of disease. It's overall social, physical, emotional, psychological well-being. So it encompasses more than just not having a disease.
Yeah, definitely. I really love that because recently in my family, we've had this discussion around my grandpa's health. So he just turned 100 years old earlier this year. Wow. So, yay, grandpa. And he's turning 101 in this coming Lunar New Year. But recently there's been some issues with his health, and now he's kind of bedridden. And we had this discussion in the family around longevity because in our extended family, there has been another grandma who now, had passed away, may her rest in peace. But when she was alive, she actually was bedridden, and she was just on life support for, I think, around 8 years. And it was something that we discussed not lightly at all because, like you said, it's, lifespan versus health span. And for her, it's not really health span at that point. It was just, lifespan and trying to prolong her life. But we discussed about how much of an impact that must have had on her because we couldn't talk to her. No one could understand what she was trying to say or convey, and she was probably in a lot of pain. And so this kind of longevity that the family tried to provide her might not be something that she would want for herself personally. So yeah, we had a really tough discussion around it. Obviously, I grew up with my grandpa, and I really wanted to, also be with the family in the conversation of, whether we should prolong his life as much as we can. And the conclusion from all of us, obviously with his consent, is that, we're not going to put him on life support. Obviously he has had a long, wonderful life, with all the other aspects of, social and physical and mental health. And it's been a great life. So we don't necessarily want to kind of prolong that lifespan for the sake of saying that, our grandpa lived to 110, it's not really the point. So yeah, I think this is a really important conversation to have.
Yeah, and it raises an important topic called values-based healthcare. And this is where it's really important to understand what is important to somebody, because that helps frame what treatments are available and acceptable. And having that discussion early to know that is it acceptable if you were bedbound and unable to communicate? And if that's not acceptable, then that really helps us in terms of how we support and offer therapies moving forward.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that medicine as a whole, we do need to be more cognizant of, to have those discussions early on, because it's very difficult in the heat of the moment to be able to make decisions and not really understand what grandpa wants.
Yeah.
But if you can have those discussions, and again, I come back to having that very long relationship with patients. We've often gone through many things together, and I can't assume I know, but we have a much better understanding of each other and can have that. What are challenging conversations? But I think people really value, or they value us knowing their values, and that we can then make informed choices.
Yeah, and I thought about it, and I think about, what I would want towards the end of life as well, right? And I mean, it's not really a morbid topic. It's just, like you said, it's important to know, to make informed decision. And, sometimes we wouldn't be in a situation where we can make the decision ourselves. And so having this conversation early on, when we know what we're talking about, I think is very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Important for the family, important for, the doctors, the nurses, and everyone involved. So yeah, this is why we have this podcast, right? To know about health and to discuss important things. But I also know that because longevity, or, like you're saying, kind of like lifespan versus health span, this is the space with a lot of different opinions, discussions, and I know that there are a lot of papers around the topic. The general public, like myself, we probably wouldn't know a lot about the research. So what do you think people tend to have in terms of misconceptions about longevity?
I think some of the misconceptions is that people can almost live forever. There is always something that you can do. And often you can do something, but the question is, should you do something? So just because you can doesn't mean you should. And there are some treatments that may actually hasten demise. And so life is finite, and we do need to support patients and their carers and families that life might be cut short, and sometimes that's outside anyone's control, but we can still make sure that the person is comfortable, not in pain, and that they are dignified. And I think that's a really important part. And look, there's misconceptions, I think, not only in the general public, but even in hospitals outside of our specialty, for example. There'll be doctors that think that we can just put somebody on dialysis and it'll be fine. Dialysis is a really, really difficult treatment. It's physically exhausting, and it impacts people's quality of life, their psychological well-being. So it's a big decision, and we certainly can offer it to just about anyone and everyone, but for a lot of people, it will actually cause a shortening of their life. And so it's having those discussions that there is lots of technology that we've got available now in medicine, but sometimes it's not appropriate to use that.
Yeah. I think for all the, especially medical terminologies are sometimes things that we probably, like, especially the general public would pick up from someone or from some conversation, and then we kind of completely mix it up and don't understand it. So that's really good to know. And today we are talking about kidney. So kidney health, the kidney and everything to do with kidney. So I think for our audience, I'm pretty sure if they're tuning into this episode, they probably want to know more, or they're sort of facing some issues with their kidney. So let's start with a broad picture of what the kidney represents in our overall health.
Yeah, sure. So the kidneys are critical. They're essential for our health and well-being. I guess to set the scene, where most people are born with two kidneys. They're about the size of our fists, and they sit at the back in our abdomen or in our belly towards sort of either side of the spine. And our kidneys are involved in a number of really fundamental processes in the body. So, we when we pass urine, when you go to the toilet, we're getting rid of excess fluid, and we're also getting rid of excess wastes. So as our cells work every day, they create some wastes or some toxins, and we've got to get rid of those through the body somehow. And through the urine is one of the ways that we're getting rid of toxins. So it gets rid of toxins, keeps our fluid balance really tightly controlled. So if we're dehydrated, you don't go to the toilet. If you've drunk too much, you go to the toilet a lot. So our body is able to maintain good fluid balance. In our body, we've got to maintain our electrolytes. And electrolytes are just really like our salts and our acid and our base, and that's another role for the kidneys. And then what's not really recognised very well is that kidneys have a hormonal effect as well. So when we're out in the sun and we get some vitamin D exposure, vitamin D has to be activated, and it gets activated by the liver and by the kidney. And we also produce from the kidney a hormone called erythropoietin, which also known as EPO, and that makes red blood cells. So they have a number of really important roles in our body. And I'm really sad that you didn't know about kidneys.
Well, I didn't know about any of this. I mean, to be fair, I did take biology class not that seriously because in our education system in Vietnam, in particular, it's a lot of just learning everything by heart and putting everything on paper. It's not about understanding what exactly you're reading. And the terminologies used are very confusing. I have to say, it's like, what is going on? I don't really understand. And there's all these factors about hormones and stuff that I was not aware of because I don't think it was in there. And perhaps it was, but it's just not translated in the right way, I guess. So this is great to know. Very good basic knowledge. I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the audience are like me when they didn't have the basic knowledge, and that's why they're here. So let's talk about some of the things that we kind of briefly touched on earlier before we jumped into the recording, if you remember. And we were talking about, the kidney health, and we were talking about issues related to the kidney. We kind of briefly touched on that, but we didn't go into detail. So I wonder, what are some of the common issues that people tend to encounter with their kidneys?
Yeah. So the most common condition that affects the kidney is this thing called chronic kidney disease. And really all that means is that the kidney isn't functioning as well as it should. So it's not functioning at 100%. And there are lots of different reasons why that might be the case. So anything that causes some damage to the kidney, it will heal. But as when you cut your hand, it heals with a little scar. We'll get some healing, but we'll get a scar in the kidney. And over time, those scars start to take away the kidney function. In Australia, and really this is represented worldwide, the most common causes of kidney damage are through diabetes and high blood pressure. And they're very prevalent in the community, and they can affect the kidney function. So that's by far the commonest cause of kidney disease. And then there's lots of other conditions. There's some that are genetic, some that arise from autoimmune diseases that can affect the kidney, other inflammation. Sometimes there can be toxicities that can occur through, infections or some medications and whatnot. Yeah. But certainly diabetes and high blood pressure are the ones that are causing the majority of kidney disease.
Yeah. So I'm sure that since now we know what the common issues would be and why they happen, what would be some of the things that we can do to take care of our kidney health?
To take care of your kidney health, the best part of this is that by taking care of your kidney health, you take care of your general health. So kidney disease falls under the umbrella of a chronic disease or a non-communicable disease, as in not an infectious disease. And that's under the same banner as heart disease and diabetes. And so it really reflects that a lot of these conditions have really common etiologies and pathophysiologies. So really it comes down to the foundation of all these chronic diseases is lifestyle and ensuring that we are attending to those foundational concepts to ensure that we have good kidney health. So, these things are things like don't smoke. That's quite easy in terms of identifying something that we shouldn't be doing. And that extends to vaping as well. And there's lots of emerging literature on the toxicities of vaping. We need to move. So physical activity is really important. And including in that is some resistance exercise, because I think the importance of our muscle health and our bone health is perhaps not been as well appreciated as what it is now emerging. We need good sleep. We need to prioritise our sleep, and we need to aim for our 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night and good quality sleep. We need to think about stress management, and high stress can really cause a lot of activation within the body. Probably one of the most pervasive sort of factors is nutrition, and we live in a world where there's a lot of fast food takeaway, ultra-processed, highly palatable foods. And these are the things that are really driving the obesity crisis, diabetes crisis, the high blood pressure crisis, and therefore the kidney crisis that we're starting to see. And as I said right at the start, there's over 2 million Australians that have some element of kidney disease, and most of that is driven by these factors. And if we can look at, particularly from a diet perspective, avoiding ultra-processed foods, avoiding sugar. And I like this saying of trying to aim for fresh, whole foods in season that suit your culture, and limiting ultra-processed foods and sugar.
Yeah, we were just talking about that earlier, and I was like, you know what, this is very basic stuff, but sometimes we forget because we are busy. We are stressed, we are under pressure, and the list goes on. And I think it's actually just a matter of the conscious choices we make, because it's so hard sometimes. Like you were saying earlier, I think we were just having a very fun chat around, a sugar and salt and things like that. And what do we do when we get stressed? Most of the time, reach for sugar. Like chocolate, donuts. That's what me today, guilty. And, it's just, I think I discussed this with someone on one of the shows before, and we did say that there's a certain level of indulgence that is okay, and within limit, that's okay. But obviously, if this is something that's repeated every single day, then it's not a healthy choice, and it's going to impact our overall health. And I'm guessing definitely the kidneys. So I guess for our audience, they might be wondering, there are so many things that I need to adjust in my lifestyle based on what Karen just mentioned. So what would be some of the minor adjustments that you think we can start doing in our everyday lives for our kidney health?
Yeah. So if we go through each of those factors, maybe, so we won't smoke. That'll be good.
Yeah.
We want to try and move each day, and it doesn't mean you need to run a marathon. The evidence is that something is better than nothing. So if you have a really sedentary job, can you incorporate a 10-minute walk into that day? That would be incredible. Can we incorporate a little bit of strength work? And there's a concept called strength snacking. And that's just throughout the day, where can we get a little bit of strength work? Doesn't mean going to the gym. It means maybe you might instead of just sitting in your chair, you might try and do 5 squats. So you might stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. Whilst you're boiling the kettle, you might do some calf raises. These are little strength snacking components. I didn't mention before the importance of some sun. So making sure we get some early morning sun, which is so important for our circadian rhythm, helps with our sleep. let's see what we can do from sleep. Can we set a routine where we're getting our 7 to 9 hours of sleep? And then from a diet perspective, I think, it is important. The things that you talked about before is when you get stressed, you eat. So it's making sure you are aware of that. So I sort of take people through a few concepts around diet, and one is to know what to eat. And so that's trying to remove the ultra-processed foods and the sugars and really prioritise protein in the diet. The second thing is to understand why we eat and what emotions are driving it. And once you start to make those connections, it doesn't mean that it's then easy to stop, but at least you're informed. You understand why you've done a particular thing, and it allows you to reflect on that and try and develop a strategy. So next time something happens, that instead of reaching for the biscuit barrel, you do something differently.
Yeah.
And then we go through, well, when do we eat, and thinking about the timing of food and snacking and whatnot. I think in terms of food, I find a lot of people, if we can move away from cereals and really high carbohydrate breakfasts, that is so much, and make that a high protein meal, that is so much more helpful than a breakfast cereal. So I try to focus on, let's try and get protein across each meal. And for most people, breakfast is the one where we're really down on protein. So instead of cereal, let's have some eggs and not have juice, and, really try and get some healthy fats and some protein at breakfast and see how you feel for the remainder of the day. And most people will find that they get more sustained, long-lasting energy. They don't have that big crash after a bowl full of sugary cereal, and it's a much better day ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, then I was like, okay, now I did something right this morning for breakfast because I did have some eggs. I'm very happy about myself.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that's really good to know, because I think these are all really basic things that we can all do. When you mentioned the what was it? The something about snacking when
strength
snacking. Yes, I remember something very funny. So one of my really close friends, she does that actually, and I find it to be very funny initially, but now that I have talked to you and I've kind of like seen her do this so many times, I find that we should be like her. So what happens is we would be hanging out, and we both work remotely most of the time. And there was she doesn't live in Melbourne; she lives in Sydney. So when we got the chance to like co-work for a day, I would find her just walking around the apartment, in between meetings or in between tasks. She would pick up her weight and she would do something like you were explaining or describing earlier, squats, lunges, and just 5 to 10 of those. And then she'd get back to her task. And I'm like, that's not a workout, but okay, good for her. And I'm the kind of person that would prefer to do a full workout to think that I have actually achieved something for my, daily workout. And now that you explain this concept of strength snacking, I'm like, this is so great, so I don't have to really be so strict about thinking I don't work out if it's not like a full 30-minute workout. Like I can just do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is the beauty of it, that something is better than nothing. So that's a really good thing to remember. And you don't actually need to go to the gym. It may be that you're putting away the groceries after shopping, and there might be 2 tins of soup, and before you pop them in the cupboard, you put them above your head a few times and then pop them in the cupboard, and you squat down to put them in the cupboard. Those sorts of things are actually really important, and if you can integrate them into your day, it allows you to fulfill that part of, I don't want to say requirement, but that part of maintaining a healthy lifestyle when you don't, because everyone's time poor, and if you don't have the time for 30 minutes at the gym, rather than not doing anything, let's see if we can get in these really little, what seem insignificant, but actually have really big impact.
Yeah. You know what it is? I just thought about atomic habits.
Atomic habits, exactly.
Yes, this is it. Like, when we think about the little things we can do every day, building little habits like this really help. And
building little habits. And he talks in that 1% every day over the course of the year, really it compounds. It's compound interest. And it's so true, because when you start getting some muscle strength, when you feel better, the aches and pains start to go, but you become our muscles are our most metabolic organ. So it really helps you metabolize the food that you eat. You sleep better. There are just so many flow-on effects. So the 1% rule is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. And, we did talk about something earlier because at the beginning of the conversation, we did talk about the hand transplantation procedure that you were involved in. And we also talked about kidney transplant. And we did say that, this is probably something that we want to discuss because obviously we do want to take care of our kidney health and do the best we can to make sure that it's in the best shape. But I also know that, from time to time for certain people, they have to go through kidney transplant for whatever reason. So let's talk a little bit more about that because I think our audience might be wondering, when is it required? Why would it happen? And when it does happen, then what do they need to know?
So kidney transplantation happens when at the kidney function gets to a point that it's insufficient to keep you well. In terms of how kidney transplant proceeds, there's a couple of pathways. If there is somebody that is wanting to give a kidney, so be a donor, so we call that living donation, then that can happen prior to needing something like dialysis to maintain kidney health.
Yeah.
If there isn't somebody that is able to donate, when you start dialysis, we hope that you'll become active on the kidney transplant waiting list. And this is a list where as organ donors become available, if there's an organ that is a match for you or you're the sort of next on the list, you'll be offered that kidney donor, that kidney organ. And then we proceed through to a transplant. To be able to receive a transplant, it's a really big operation. So you have to be worked up very carefully, ensure that you're able to cope with the procedure and also the medication that we need to give to minimise or to avoid rejection. So it's quite a big procedure. So there's a lot of workup that's involved. And once the transplant occurs, there's a lot of intense follow-up, sort of almost daily for the first few weeks after a transplant. And then it slowly starts to become less frequent. But, say by a year post-transplant, we're seeing you maybe every month or so in the clinic. So it's still fairly frequent follow-up. And for the rest of the time that you have this kidney transplant, you'll continue to see a kidney specialist at a minimum of every 3 months.
I see. It is definitely a very big procedure in itself, and I think a lot of people might get a little bit intimidated by the thought of needing a transplantation. But from what you just explained, I think it's kind of broken down into steps, and it's quite clear that it's not the end of the world if this is required for the kidney health. And I think it's just a matter of talking about it as well, because sometimes people probably don't even notice that they need support. Like, before you get to the stage of needing a transplantation procedure, let's say somebody start noticing some issues that they have, but they just don't really go and check. And then that's where it gets really bad and they actually need that procedure. So I think another thing that our audience might benefit from is what would be some of the symptoms or early symptoms that they should look out for so that they get that, frequent checkup and make sure they take care of their kidney health.
Yeah, this is a really tricky question to answer because because for kidney disease, it's often silent. So if we think about it, we have 2 kidneys.
Yeah.
It's more than enough kidney for if you're healthy and well. I can donate 1 whole kidney and I will remain very healthy. So we have excess kidneys and therefore damage can be happening in the kidneys and you won't know about it. So for some people, they will not know they have any kidney problems until more than 90% of their kidney function is lost.
Oh, wow.
And this is the group that it becomes a really big challenge physically and psychologically, because one moment they're well and next moment there's very little kidney function. So for kidney disease, we want people to be educated. We want people to actually understand what the kidneys do because we need to be proactive. So we would recommend that we screen for kidney disease, and we screen for kidney disease if you have, in particular, diabetes or high blood pressure. We recommend screening for kidney disease straight away. If you've got heart disease, we recommend screening for kidney disease. If you've been a smoker, if you're carrying excess weight, they're all really important reasons to start screening for kidney disease. And then if you don't have any of those risks, then if you're 60, we would suggest screening for kidney disease. Or if you identify as a First Nations Australian, we would recommend that starts at age 18. And the reason for that is because the burden of kidney disease amongst First Nations Australians is much higher, and it can progress very rapidly. So the thing with kidney disease is to think kidneys, to be proactive, because if we can identify the presence of kidney disease, there's things that we can do. There's all these lifestyle factors, and now we have a large range of therapies that can really help slow the progression of kidney disease and maintain good health. So knowledge is power, and that's the same for kidney disease. Being empowered, having some control really is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, that's really great to know. And I think this is great information. I was like nodding along the whole time because I'm like, this is great. Like, gonna make notes. Thank you so much for sharing. I think our audience would greatly benefit from this information because it sounds like it's basic, but I'm quite sure that some people are like me. They are just getting started and getting to know about kidney health. So this is amazing. Thank you for sharing. So we've sort of covered quite a bit on the theoretical front, and also a little bit of some things that people can do to improve their kidney health already. That said, we do have a section in our podcast where we discuss a practice or a habit that we should talk about, or we should recommend to our audience. So perhaps this is like just to summarize what we discussed and to maybe emphasize something that you would like to share with our audience. Maybe one practice or one habit that we can incorporate into our daily lives to improve our kidney health.
I think the thing that would have be most impactful would be thinking about our diet and ensuring that we're getting protein across every meal. So breakfast, lunch and dinner, where is my protein? Prioritize my protein and make sure that you're getting that protein across the day. I think that probably could have one of the most powerful impacts because when we eat protein, then we're more satiated. We're less likely to snack on things that are less helpful. It supports our musculoskeletal health, our bones and our muscles, which keeps us strong. It supports our heart. It supports our kidneys. So I think that's actually a really doable thing, and it's just moving from a cereal base to something that is protein rich. If I could do something across every pillar of lifestyle, then I would, and that would be incorporating some morning sun. Having a cup of tea outside in the morning sun would be great. Making sure that we're getting that sleep would be another one. Practicing something for stress reduction or stress management, whether it be a little bit of mindfulness or journaling, something again that doesn't take a lot of time. So it's all these 1%ers from Atomic Habits.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for highlighting all these amazing things that we can incorporate into our daily lives. They're all very doable, and I'm definitely going to start doing that. So this is great for our audience, I'm sure, and hopefully they will also start picking up these I'd probably say like micro habits that we can all do every day. So next up, before we wrap up the podcast, we have open mic, and this is your platform to talk about anything you're passionate about. And I know that you probably have many passions, just from talking to you and listening to your stories earlier. Perhaps there is something that you would like to share with our audience in a few minutes. So yeah, take it away.
Sure. I guess, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is, and probably is reflected in the things that I said at the start on in the movies that I've enjoyed and the people that I look up to, but it's ensuring gender equity in medicine and in society. And, I think I had a role in one of our society councils, and gender inequity was really apparent, and working to ensure that we support, we mentor, we sponsor women into leadership positions, I think is incredibly important and is a real passion of mine. And so, I think we need to be accountable. We need to be able to, even on a podcast like this, are we ensuring that you have as many female guests as you do male guests, and that's reported on, and that's freely available for everybody to see. Data drives change, and data's really important. And makes us accountable. So I think gender equity is something that we need to continue to strive for, particularly given recent political events. I think sexism, misogyny is still very rife in society, and that's something that's completely unacceptable. So that's another passion of mine. I have a daughter. I have sons as well, and I expect my daughter to be able to earn as much as her siblings, her brothers. She should have the same opportunity to be the CEO of whichever company she wants to be the CEO of, as well as the boys. So I don't think don't think the boys shouldn't be allowed to get there, but the girls, they need the opportunities, which at times I think they don't have those opportunities.
Yeah, I absolutely love that message. And, thank you. To add on to that, I just want to close us out with the message of, there's another thing that's kind of prevalent lately, and I just started to notice, which is ageism. And I was completely in shock, but I kind of came across some information and some comments around, this person is too young to be in kind of this position and that position. And I think that's another issue in our society, because what does age have to do with anything? Does it speak for experience? Does it speak for maturity? I don't think so. And, I think this is something that we should think about more, along with what you just talked about, gender equality and all the other issues that we're kind of dealing with nowadays, because that just helps us to make sure everyone has the same opportunity. And, it's just based on, it's kind of on a merit base, rather than, this is because of X, Y, and Z, and it has nothing to do with how good they are. Yeah.
And I think it's beholden on each of us to stop and think where our internal biases are. And it's interesting when you said ageism, I immediately jumped to older age. So so there's
too young or too old.
There's an internal bias. So you're exactly right. So merit is clearly very important and the priority. But then we also do, I think there are roles at times for things like quotas, because you can't be what you can't see. And I think the merit sometimes can be clouded by biases. And so I do think there is a role for quotas, and that's really important to ensure that women are represented and have a voice. We represent 50% of the community. We need to have that voice.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great message to close with. So thank you for sharing that. There's so much that we can talk about, in these topics, and they're kind of all interrelated. I'm sure we can continue on talking about this all day, but in the interest of time, we would love to let you go soon. And before we do, we would love to get you to share with our audience where they can find out more about your work.
Sure. So I'm the Director of Nephrology at the moment at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. I also do some private medicine, and if you Google, you'll find me. But I have published a number of peer review papers, but I also write for. I've written for The Conversation and for things like AusDoc, which are perhaps a little bit easier to read. So yeah, and I'm on social media. X at Karen Dwyer 12 is probably the platform I use most, and also LinkedIn.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you for coming on to the show, for sharing all your insights, and for sharing all of that information with our audience. And hopefully we'll have you back some other time.
Great. Thanks for the opportunity.
You have been listening to Aging Less, the Longevity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at longevity.lifemanagementsciencelabs.com, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.